Before we start, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is in your city right now. Hold that time in your head. Because on America's night trains between 1905 and 1915, minutes were currency. If someone bought 12 of them in the right corridor, a marriage, a campaign, or a career could change before the next whistle. Picture a sleeper leaving Chicago just after dusk, bound for St. Louis. Coal smoke in the vestibules, brass rails polished so hard you can see your guilt in them, and a long, narrow hall where the carpet eats footsteps. The timetable says respectable things. Depart 8:05, arrive 7:45. The real schedule lives in pockets you never see. The man who keeps that secret clock tonight is Samuel Pike, master porter on car 213, Pullman, Cimarron. Mid-30s, jacket pressed, eyes that can read a berth number in the dark. He runs the crew by 3 rules the railroad never printed. First, tips are truth. A man who tips well will tell you what he fears without moving his mouth. Second, curtains are contracts. Never open one unless you are paid to close it. Third, if there is a problem, fix it by time, not by noise. Sam's crew is 3 porters and a laundrywoman who is not on any roster. Eddie Cole is the youngest, all arms and questions, and a shine kit he treats like a church. Jasper Reed is spare and quiet and knows which congressman snores like a saw. Dora Lennox runs the laundry basket from the pantry like it is charity. It is not charity. It is a mailbox. People who cannot risk writing a name fold a note into a $1 bill and tuck it into a cuff to be laundered. Dora never reads unless reading saves the car. At 8:07, 2 passengers board late and wrong for each other. A state senator who called ahead under a false surname that fool lawyers use when they think everyone was born yesterday, and an actress with a hat brim that hides half a city. They do not say hello. They look at the berth tags and the corridor in between. Sam has already made a change that the printed manifest does not show. Berth 7 and berth 8 are now blind twins, a trick you pull with 2 duplicate luggage tags, a pencil, and courage. It means 2 people who paid for separate compartments can pretend to be strangers and still meet without a porter accidentally drawing the wrong curtain. Sam slides 2 cards into the senator's hand as if they were Pullman receipts. One is real, berth assignment. The other is a courtesy he never learned at training school. A narrow slip of paper stamped with a number that does not exist in any timetable. 12 after 11. That is the minute the sleeper will pause at a siding outside Springfield, the hallway lights dimmed for freight priority. The pause is not on the railroad's mind. It is on Sam's. How much, the senator asks without shame. You already paid in St. Louis, Sam says. What you owe now is silence. The actress does not buy minutes. She buys a different thing, something that keeps men off her name when they talk loud in lunchrooms. She hands Dora a glove with 2 fingers missing and says she lost it. Dora will launder it back to her on the car before morning with a new cuff sewn inside and a tug string. If a corridor gets crowded or a lobbyist turns familiar after champagne, that glove can be pulled twice, and a porter will appear as if the car itself was defending her. By 9, the crew is done collecting coats and hats, and the car has become a hush disguised as luxury. The conductor checks tickets and pretends he does not see Sam's second ledger, a slim book with no names. It lists only times, cars, and the word purchased in the margin when someone paid to move their problem down the track. The car attendant from the next sleeper peeks in and asks if Sam has any courtesy curtains. That is a code. It means he has a couple from Detroit who wish to be respectable in the morning and brave tonight. Sam sells him 2 curtains that close from the inside, with a twist so quiet, even a policeman with his ear at the cloth would think he was listening to air. Not all business is bed. Some of it is alibi. A lawyer in berth 3 slips a folded dollar into Eddie's shine kit with a note that is more coward than ink. He needs the porter to send his trunk forward to the baggage car at midnight and to tell any man who asks that he slept from Peoria to Alton. Eddie looks at Sam. Sam nods because the boy has to learn sooner or later. You do not sell guilt. You sell distance. 1 car length can be a country if a man has enemies. At 9:40, a man gets on in Joliet with a face that is practiced being honest. He is a railroad detective named Merritt. He wears a badge but likes showing the watch more. Men who flash watches prefer minutes to laws. He says he is riding to observe morale. He says it like morale is a chair he can sit in and own. Sam shows him the empty smoking chair at the end of the car, offers coffee, and gives him nothing to watch worth writing down. Jasper brings a tray and puts the cup where coffee would spill on the badge if a man leans too far into trouble. The scandal people pay for does not start with touching. It starts with luggage. At 10:10, Sam pulls the manifest and makes 3 changes that look like tidying. He moves a steamer trunk from the senator's berth to the opposite end of the car, so if anyone asks later, he can say a porter reorganized for balance. He lends the actress a hat box from the Lost and Found to carry nothing. This gives her a reason to step out at 12 after 11 without looking like a woman who learned the wrong lesson about doors. He hands Eddie 2 duplicate luggage tags cut from an old Pullman card and shows him how to layer one over another with spit and patience. If anyone checks at 3 in the morning, the tags will say what the porter needs them to say. Dora Lennox earns her night's pay in a single silent decision. She reads a note tucked into a cuff that says, "Berth 7, trap." The handwriting is a nervous hand, hoping to look brave. Dora does not show Sam. She does not show Jasper. She walks to the smoking end, tells Merritt, the detective, she needs a gentleman's help, moving a heavy trunk near the vestibule, and leads him away from the corridor at the exact minute the senator is supposed to whisper. By the time the trap setter realizes nobody is on the second half of his sentence, the car is past the whistle, and the siding is behind them. Small things sell the illusion. Sam keeps a pad of turn-down courtesy cards in his vest. He only uses them on nights like this. The cards say the porter regrets an inconvenience due to switching, that lights will dim for 7 minutes, that passengers may remain undisturbed unless they request a fresh blanket. The excuse is broom closet poetry, but it keeps the knuckles off the curtains. He posts one at the head of the corridor and another near the water cooler. Everyone sees it, and nobody will dare say afterwards they saw nothing. People like proof of their own ignorance. At 10:30, a farmer's wife alone in a lower berth presses the bell for the wrong reason. She is not afraid of the dark. She is afraid of being seen, wanting to be less alone in it. Eddie goes first and asks if she needs water. She says she heard footsteps. Eddie says that is the train breathing. She says she heard whispering. Eddie says that is the timetables in the conductor's breast pocket rubbing together when he walks. He is stupid in the kind way a woman can use. She turns to the wall and sleeps. Not everyone on the car wants scandal. Some people want to be told a lie that lets them go quiet. The money moves different when it is ugly. At 11, a preacher boards in Bloomington with a ticket bought by a woman whose last name he should not know. He hands Sam his card and a pamphlet as if he always carries both to the same rooms. Sam reads the card and the pamphlet and decides this is a man who will make noise later if the car does not carry him smoothly now. He assigns the preacher a compartment 2 down from a pink-curtained family who has a baby that cries every time the train takes a curve. He has not been paid to place the preacher next to anything. He has been paid to make him tired. Not every porter plays the game. That is why the Syndicate exists. Nobody calls it that out loud, but every main line has one. A man in St. Louis who knows a man in Chicago, who knows a woman in Kansas City, who writes down who wanted what, on which Thursday. The railroad pretends it does not know. The Syndicate never says it does. The only written thing is a stack of laundry tickets where the meanings live in the numbers. A 3 means return untouched. A 5 means return with a note tucked in the cuff. A 7 means do not return anything except silence. At 11:30, Merritt decides to be useful in the way police think is helpful. He announces he will patrol the corridor at midnight and check curtains for safety. Sam smiles in a way that discourages speeches. If you must look, he says, look at the berth numbers, not under the blankets. Berth numbers are the thing that goes missing when men are foolish. Merritt says he knows the difference. Sam does not argue. He moves the senator's second luggage tag from 7 to 9 with the tip of a fingernail. If Merritt insists on counting, he will count wrong. The sighting is not on the public schedule. It exists because men in the yard like an easy night. 12 after 11 is when a freight drag ambles through a junction and every passenger train has to pretend it cares about commerce. Tonight, Sam needs the sighting for a different reason. He gives the conductor a folded courtesy slip and a shrug. The conductor reads the handwriting and the amount and pretends to reverse his pocket watch. The Cimarron coasts into a sidetrack and the lamps go down one click like a tired theater. Sam waits in the corridor with a folded blanket and a coin between 2 fingers. If anyone opens a curtain wrong, they will see a porter's face and a quarter. The quarter is for buying their way back to their side of the hallway. The face is for letting them know they should. The senator steps out first and moves 2 doors down like a man eager to inspect doors. The actress steps out seconds later with the lost and found hat box like a modest shield. Nobody speaks. They pass like strangers with matching errands. Behind them, Jasper drags a trunk the long way to make noise in the wrong place on purpose. People sleep better when they think a racket belongs to honest work. Dora moves in the other direction with the laundry basket and keeps Merritt curious. She tells him about a new stain powder that takes out tobacco without erasing the cuff. Men love knowledge they can use without being kind. While he is asking how much powder to use, the senator and the actress fulfill a plan they will each pretend later was an accident. Their 2 minutes of courage are the car's longest hour. Not everyone on the car is breaking a promise. A soldier in upper 11 reads a letter from a girl in Hannibal and tucks it under his pillow like a pledge. A bookkeeper writing columns in a notebook stops and stares at nothing until the car moves again. A mother feeds a baby and falls asleep sitting up. None of them have paid for minutes. They still benefit from Sam's lie about freight priority. People forget that respectable sleep is easier when scandal is contained. 12:20. The door clicks. The senator returns to 7 or 9 or whatever number the tags say and looks like a man who has invented a moral he can carry home. The actress puts the hat box on the luggage rack the way people put trophies on mantels. Merritt finally makes his patrol and finds nothing because the labels told him the truth they were paid to tell. He writes "quiet corridor" in his pocketbook and thinks he invented it. 1 o'clock is when the Syndicate sells the other product, alibis in transit. Eddie moves the lawyer's trunk to the baggage car and stamps the baggage check with a time that says the trunk left before a quarrel could have been overheard. Jasper changes a towel in a compartment no one used, so the maid at the St. Louis terminal can swear the berth was occupied. Dora stitches a new cuff into the glove and sends it back like a promise. Sam sits at the end of the car and listens to the rails and decides which minutes to keep and which to sell tomorrow. He does not call it blackmail. He calls it rainfall. If a client forgets to tip on a night when the car saved his name, the rain falls in different places. A reporter in Topeka gets an unsigned note saying a man should be asked about a junction. A wife in Springfield finds a hat pin in a pocket that does not belong in her house. The Syndicate does not write those notes. Apartments write them. Hotel clerks write them. Strangers write them. The Syndicate simply does not stop them. Just before 2, the corridor bell rings in the high, sharp way that means trouble nobody paid for. A boy on upper 5 cannot breathe. The mother's voice is ragged. Eddie moves faster than any man has a right to on a moving train, gets the window shade up, bangs on the frame to make a draft, and shouts for Sam. Sam never runs. Tonight, he runs. The whole car holds its breath like a choir. Jasper brings a bowl of water and a towel and does not ask if it will help. Dora takes the baby in her arms and sings a song that makes Merritt forget he is a detective. The boy coughs, then coughs again, then cries the way mothers like to hear. The corridor exhales. Sam replaces the courtesy card with a different one. In case of emergency, bell twice. Everyone reads it and remembers they are people before they are interesting. Sam watches Merritt tuck his notebook away. The detective has been here all night and has learned the 2 truths of this car. The porters can ruin you, and the porters can save you. He will decide which story to tell after breakfast, depending on whether the coffee is good and whether the senator remembers to look humble when the sun comes up. At 2:30, the Cimarron rolls through a town where nothing is open but a telegraph office and a jail. The timetable says nothing happened. Sam's ledger says purchased next to 4 lines and owed next to 2. He closes the book and puts it in a pocket sewn under the chair cushion, the only safe in America that no thief will think to search. In the morning, the conductor will say the ride was smooth. The preacher will look pious and tired. The actress will be a little smug. The senator will have a sentence ready for his wife that begins with traffic. Sam will nod to the platform agent the way men nod when they know things they will not prove. Eddie will count his change and think about the farmer's wife who wanted a lie she could sleep under. Dora will stitch the last cuff and put the needle away. Jasper will stand in the vestibule and smoke as if to disinfect the night. Merritt will shake Sam's hand and decide if he is coming back as a friend or an investigation. The Syndicate will write nothing and remember everything. The timetable that makes strangers meet is not printed on paper. It lives in pockets and bell codes. On Tuesday, Car 213 comes off the Chicago run and gets reassigned to the Midnight Arrow for Kansas City. New conductor, same crew, different temptations. The Syndicate hates new conductors because they think rules are a fresh coat of paint. Samuel Pike lets him believe that until the first stop. Before boarding, Sam gives his crew the only map that matters. It is a folded card with 7 minutes highlighted between 3 towns most people cannot spell. Dwight to Odell. 2 minutes where the corridor goes blind when the locomotive takes water. Odell to Cayuga. 3 minutes where the conductor is busy at the baggage car and the bell pull never reaches him. Cayuga to Normal. 2 minutes where the lamps dim on their own because a loose rheostat nobody has the budget to fix flickers like the car is shy. Sam taps those windows with a finger. You do not sell touching, he says. You sell silence and timing. If anyone demands more, you sell them a luggage problem that takes them to the wrong end of the car. Dora Lennox passes around the new maid service codes, the way a house teaches a dog to heel without shouting. Towel over the brass rail at waist height. The occupant wants coffee and no eyes. Towel on the floor by the curtain. Trouble, come now. Pillow at 45 degrees. Return note in cuff. Blanket corner tucked under the berth tag. Extend the dim by 1 minute. Eddie Cole writes them on his thumbnail with a pencil nub. Jasper Reed does not need to. He remembers the way men breathe when they are about to lie. The Kansas City Manifest is the kind that buys bad decisions. A cattle buyer with too much cash in his pockets. A dentist with a suitcase of instruments and a reason to leave town in the dark. A widow with a black veil and mink cuff who tips like grief and eyes the corridor like a plan. And 2 names that do not belong on the same night. Harlan Lathrop, railroad attorney with a crusade against immorality on corporate property. And Rosalie Vane, chorus girl whose face has visited too many lunch counters to be nobody. They are booked 6 berths apart. That is how a scandal begins. Near enough to engineer, far enough to deny. At 10:12 after Joliet, the new conductor insists on a sheet check and stands in the vestibule with a pencil the way men stand with a pistol when they want to look useful. Sam rolls the linen cart past him and lets the man count. While he is counting, Jasper swaps 2 luggage tags the length of a fingernail apart. Lathrop's trunk goes from 7 to 9. Rosalie's hat box goes from 11 to 7. On paper, nothing changed. In the corridor, the senator from the Chicago run would have called it fate. Lathrop calls it order, a word he hides behind when he is frightened of what he wants. Merritt boards at Pontiac with a different coat and the same badge. Transfer, he says, which means he smelled a story and asked for the car by number. He sits at the smoking end with a view down the hall and a pocketbook that will only be dangerous if Sam lets the car do the work for him. Sam does not. He shrinks the windows. Dwight to Odell becomes 1 minute, not 2. Odell to Cayuga disappears entirely when the baggage clerk needs a second signature. Cayuga to Normal still gives him 2, but only if Eddie remembers to kill the lamp at the end sconce with a twist that would get him fired if a superintendent walked in while the light was dying. Rosalie Vane does not carry a note. She carries a powder compact that tells the truth in the mirror and lies to anyone behind her. She drops it at the water cooler. Eddie picks it up, cleans the glass with his sleeve, and gives her back the wrong compact, one with a folded cuff inside like a silk chrysalis. The cuff will come back to her with a string sewn into the hem. If a stranger in a berth becomes a mistake in a corridor, she can tug once and disappear behind a drawn curtain that needs pressing. Lathrop sends $1 through Dora's basket with no note and the curl of a mouth that says he hates being the kind of man who keeps $1 in a cuff for dirty errands. Dora adds a note for him. Not words. A glove with 2 fingers missing, laundered and pressed. It means walk past your courage once and see if it follows. At 11:01, the cattle buyer starts a fight with a berth tag because men like him do not know how to fight each other without breaking furniture. Jasper takes the punch with his shoulder and bleeds a teaspoon in the smoking end where nobody is important because blood in a corridor is a report and blood in the smoking chair is rough traffic. This is the part the Syndicate never writes down. Sometimes the porters buy the scandal so the passengers do not have to. The first made code pings the aisle. Pillow at 45 in berth 9. Lathrop wants a note returned with a different cuff. Eddie moves soft as soap, swaps cuffs, and brings back what looks like a handkerchief that was born in a better house. Inside is a line that would look dull in daylight and dangerous now. 12 passed. Sam does not need to be told which 12. He can hear the locomotive breathe when it is generous. Merritt chooses the worst possible moment to feel diligent. He stands, stretches his legs, and strolls down the corridor with his watch like a man who expects the car to stop and ask why he is handsome. Eddie steps into the hall with a tray because trays and watches resolve each other in men like Merritt. They hate to spill on their own authority. Merritt leans back to avoid the tray. In that lean, he misses Rosalie passing Lathrop, like a coincidence with better posture. Two things go wrong at once. The lamps dim a hair early because the rheostat refuses to be a team player, and the new conductor, wanting to be useful, tells the brakeman to check a coupler at the exact minute the door needs to remain closed. The dim makes a wife from Springfield wake and sit up fast. The coupler check gives her a reason to stand in the corridor to steady herself. She steps out in time to see two shadows, more intimate than strangers. This is how an inquiry begins, in the split between a good lie and an honest accident. Dora has the answer before the question is fully formed. She slides down the corridor with a blanket and a needle and stumbles on purpose, spilling a bundle of towels at the Springfield wife's feet. "I am so sorry," she says, breathless. "We got the turn-down order wrong for your berth, and the car dimmed early. Let me fix the curtain and get your husband to the conductor." There is no husband. The wife says nothing. "Then sit," Dora adds, too bright to argue with. She wraps the blanket around the woman's shoulders, shakes her head at Eddie, and mouths, "Move the lights." Eddie twists the end sconce a fraction back up. The inquiry dies unborn. At 11:12, the sighting outside Odell gives Sam his window and his headache. He needs 2 clean minutes. He gets 90 seconds and a conductor who wants to watch him be honest. Sam takes a sheet off the linen cart and writes in pencil in a corner and folds it over his arm. Then he walks the hall with the easy, practiced step of a porter who has done this on 30 lines and knows which floors groan. He taps once on 7 and once on 9 and waits. Rosalie's compact catches the gaslight just enough to signal yes without saying it. Lathrop mistakes the reflection for his own courage. They pass like people who intend to be late and enjoy it. The maid service code for trouble hits at the same time from a different berth. Towel on the floor in 3. The dentist did not leave town because of a bill. He left because of a writ. A deputy marshal is supposed to board at Bloomington. Dora sees the towel and the panic and should ignore it. She does not. She takes the dentist's suitcase to the pantry, swaps the name card, and sends it forward to the baggage car with a tag for the wrong train. Tomorrow the marshal will chase the wrong trunk to the wrong platform and write a report about clerical error, and Dora will sleep because she decided to be a person on a night when being a clerk would have been safer. Merritt reaches for the curtain at 9 because he is tired of not catching the thing he promised himself he would catch. Jasper slides a coffee cup into his hand like a bribe from a better world. "Car rule," Jasper says. "Hands full, no curtains." Men love rules when they are failing at mischief. Merritt drinks and pretends he was thirsty. Lathrop ruins his own alibi at 11:15 by trying to buy extra minutes with speech. He whispers too long at a corner. He stands where a man who is proud of himself would not stand. He leaves a shadow on a birth tag with his thumb because men who are busy with secrets forget the laws of coal dust. Eddie wipes the brass and saves him from his own thumbprint. That is a thing porters do that no one pays for and nobody thanks them for. Past midnight, the car turns into commerce again. The cattle buyer finally sleeps. The dentist counts instruments in a new order and decides to live through mourning. Rosalie ties the glove string into her sleeve and asks Dora without asking if she can keep it. Dora nods. Some tools are permanent if a woman once needed them in a hallway. At Normal, a Pinkerton man boards for a ride to the state capitol. Heavy boots, light questions. He says he is here for labor trouble. That means he is here for the Syndicate and anyone who makes railroads look human. He does not know he is late to the same story Merritt is pretending to write. Sam treats him like freight. Catalog, route, deliver to oblivion. The new conductor finally tries to grow a spine at 12:40. He asks to see Sam's complaint book, the one porters carry to collect gripes and praise so the company can pretend to read them. Sam hands him a book full of neat handwriting and dull gratitude. It is real. It is also the third book. He keeps the one that matters under the cushion with the money. Times, Windows, who paid for silence and who tried to bargain with virtue. The conductor reads 3 lines, finds nothing exciting, and quits. The only scandal Sam will admit to is the black ledger moment at 1:05. The widow in mink asks for hot water and a private word. She does not ask for a man. She asks for a minute that will not turn into a rumor. She wants to sit on the fold-down chair by the rear door and cry into a hand towel until the train takes the curve that makes the car squeal like a violin. Sam stands 6 paces away and watches the corridor for her. Nobody pays him for that. He logs the minute anyway. Purchased. At 1:30, Merritt tries the last tool in his kit. He walks the length of the car with his badge in his hand and says in a steady voice that he will be inspecting for safety and morale. He intends to open one curtain, just one, anywhere. Sam answers with a sentence the Syndicate uses when a policeman needs to be turned into a witness who never saw what he thought he saw. Then you should start with your own berth, Sam says, and points to the empty inspector's bunk with the blanket folded sharp. If you check yourself first, every man will follow. Merritt stands between pride and survival and picks survival. He opens his own curtain, stares at nothing, says, "All right," and leaves the rest shut. The last mistake of the night comes from Rosalie Vane, not from a man. When the car brakes for the Capitol, she slides a silver hairpin under Sam's ledger instead of handing him cash. It is a pretty bribe and a bad idea. Pretty bribes become trophies. Trophies become proof. Sam slides the pin back. "We do not keep souvenirs," he says. "We keep schedules." She tucks the pin into her hair like a lesson she will not forget until the next train. At 2:05, the midnight arrow glides past the telegraph office, where nightmen tap out lies for money and truth for fun. Merritt steps onto the platform with nothing he can swear to but the feeling that the porters made him behave. The Pinkerton rides onto the Capitol to file a report that blames nobody and frightens the wrong men. The new conductor decides he likes quiet and will not ask for the complaint book again. Lathrop rehearses a speech about how much he loves his wife that begins with the weather. Rosalie watches her reflection in the window and practices being brave without paying for it. Dora counts her needles and hopes the dentist gets a morning that is not fate. Eddie falls asleep sitting up in the pantry with his pencil nub still in his ear. Jasper cleans a coffee ring off the brass like it's a stain on his name. Sam totals the night. 3 purchased, 2 owed, 1 cleared that no one will read about because it was a towel and a hand on a door jamb and a porter with a quarter stopping a mistake before it grew teeth. He closes the ledger, slips it under the cushion, and takes the map of windows back into his pocket. The Syndicate will get a note by laundry ticket about which towns gave minutes generously and which ones tried to make a man beg for them. Next run, they will sell the same silence with a different excuse. The timetable printed on paper will stay the same. The one that moves people will keep changing every time a porter decides a scandal is a bad investment. The first time they called it a courtesy delay, the car was 3 minutes from a small town no mapmaker loved, and 6 minutes from a newspaper office that paid cash for gossip. After the Kansas City run, the Midnight Arrow turned west for Omaha with the same crew and a passenger list that read like a dare. A circuit judge traveling alone, a woman who used to headline in Peoria and now billed herself as a voice teacher, 2 State House aides who knew each other too well for colleagues, and a company man from the yard who wore his authority like a borrowed coat. Merritt reappeared at Galesburg with new stationery and the same itch to be right. He said he was on assignment for the railroad's Morals Committee. No one laughed. Sam drew a map on a scrap of menu. He did not show it to the conductor. He showed it to Jasper and Eddie and Dora. 3 windows labeled by whistle count. 1 short at Monmouth when the engine took water and the conductor always stepped off to stretch. 1 long at a siding past Yorkville where freights played chess with one another and everyone else had to wait. The last, the worst, the one that required lying to a timetable just before Council Bluffs, where the dispatcher could be convinced to hold a passenger car for a phantom inspection if a certain telegraph key tapped the right apology. "Why hold?" Eddie asked. "Holding brings eyes." "Exactly," Sam said. Some nights the only way to keep a story off the platform is to give the platform a different story to look at. They were already selling time on the first curve. The judge in lower 2 sent Eddie a cuff with a card inside that was not a prayer and not a letter either, just a line from a meeting that would read differently in a headline. The voice teacher sent nothing but lingered at the water cooler long enough to catch her reflection and decide she could pass for respectable at dawn if somebody dimmed the lamps at midnight. The State House aides pretended to sleep with their shoes on. The yard man toured the vestibule and touched hardware with the confidence of a man who had once worked for a superintendent and liked to remind himself. Dora took inventory of people, not hats. She watched the judge count his coins twice at the lavatory, like a man who pays for sins up front. She watched the aides glance at each other's curtains when the car rolled and the coupling clanked. Small looks that needed a bigger alibi than either could afford. She watched Merritt sit where a man sits when he wants to own the width of a hallway. She folded a glove into a cuff and sent it back to the voice teacher with a thread sewn into the hem. Tug once, appear. Tug twice, disappear. Dora had invented her own code for nights like this. The yard man made the first move with his mouth. At Monmouth he leaned on the linen cart and asked Sam a question that was not about sheets. "How often do you dim the car for courtesy?" he said, as if the word courtesy tasted funny. "Company policy says courtesy is for mothers and cripples." "Policy doesn't ride at midnight," Sam said. "Policy rings a bell at noon." The man grinned. He wanted to be offended and did not know how. "You boys sell more than coffee," he said. Sam smiled back. "We sell sleep," he said. "People bring their own dreams." Merritt pretended not to hear, which meant he heard everything. He smoked at the end chair with the watch exposed every time the car took a curve, the way men do who have decided time is their badge. He talked to the judge about order the way men talk when they want a friend later and a witness now. He asked Dora if the laundry ever lost a cuff by accident. She told him laundry never loses anything by accident. He watched Eddie like the boy had a sign on his back that said evidence. The conductor for this leg had been warned by the last one that Sam carried more books than the company owned. He tried to be useful without being brave. He counted pillows with a pencil, asked for the complaint book, and read 3 pages of compliments written by people who were grateful for hot water. Then he asked if Sam had ever staged a stop. Sam let him hold the thought like a toy, and handed him a form with a blank space where a time might appear if a dispatcher owed someone a favor. "You sign," Sam said pleasantly, "and you own it." The conductor put the form back under the pile and went away. The first scandal was a small one the crew contained for a tip. The aides used the loose rheostat at Yorkville to steal 90 seconds nobody would notice, and traded whispers under a sign that said, "No smoking." Jasper knocked a tray at the right second, so a cup rang like a bell and covered a sentence that would have been ruinous in sunlight. He collected their dollar like a barman and forgot their faces the way a priest forgets confessions he did not believe. The second scandal was a bigger one that would have traveled without help. The judge had a habit. He stored his private letters in the same pocket as his tickets. During the courtesy dim at the siding, he pulled too many papers at once and dropped a sheet that had more names than nouns. A boy in the aisle would have picked it up and read. A Pinkerton would have stepped on it and apologized. Merritt would have folded it into the law. Dora saw it first. She knelt, picked the letter by a corner so ink would not smear, and tucked it back into the ticket book while the judge tugged his curtain and tried to look like a man who only wanted a blanket. She saved a stranger 2 newspaper columns without being asked. The judge never knew. The syndicate keeps score in a ledger that nobody signs. The third scandal had a buyer. The yard man, who called himself Hutch and wore the wrong kind of smile for everyone's health, spent the run to Council Bluffs, studying the rhythm of the car and tapping his own. He had a small brown notebook full of places and times and the number 8 written too often. At 8 past the hour, a lamp dimmed. At 8 past the mile, the conductor walked away. At 8 past courage, the curtain swayed. Hutch did not want timing for love. He wanted it for leverage. Men like him got hired in yards when superintendents needed dirt that could be denied. He cornered Eddie in the pantry with a tip and a test. "If the car got held 15 minutes outside Council Bluffs," he said softly, "and if a certain corridor were dim, and if a certain man with a legal habit needed to be seen in a certain place at a certain time, could you help the company with morale?" Eddie swallowed. He was young enough to be flattered. He was old enough to recognize a trap wearing the company's hat. "We sell sleep," he said, repeating Sam because repeating Sam kept boys employed. Hutch smiled like a man who had been called worse. He let Eddie pass and went to the telegraph table at the end of the car to write a note on company paper. A siding request, a courtesy hold, a code number that would make a dispatcher forget to ask which superintendent was awake to approve it. This was the trick. Hutch did not need the whole crew to misbehave. He only needed the timetable to agree to be late. Sam saw the fold of paper and read it without reading it. He had 3 choices. Let the hold happen and let Hutch collect blackmail with the railroad seal on the envelope. Refuse the hold and let Hutch complain to a committee that would believe any sentence that began with "for safety." Or steal the hold and sell it to someone who needed to buy 15 minutes of protection instead of 15 minutes of sin. He chose theft. He found the judge in lower 2 and spoke the only kind of truth this car can afford. "There is a man who wants to make a story out of you," he said. "He will ask the dispatcher to hold us for a courtesy inspection at the Western Junction. If you are in your berth at 1/2 you will be seen. If you are on the platform getting air, you will be seen. If you are in the lavatory washing your hands, you will be seen. If you are in the baggage car checking a trunk, you will be seen. You can pay me for bad news now, or pay someone else for it later." The judge studied the curtain like it was a text, and he had forgotten how to read. "What would you do?" he asked. "I would buy somebody else's delay," Sam said. There was a moment in which a man who had decided other men's lives from a bench weighed his own. He handed Sam a coin and a fact. "The voice teacher is not my scandal," he said quietly. "My scandal is that I do not believe in the men I sit with. I take the delay if you can find a way to hang it on their coats." Sam did not like the judge. He liked the problem. He took the coin and walked the length of the car until he found the aides sharing a cigarette near the vestibule, the same way men share courage when they run out. "You two owe me a favor," he said without preamble. "You got 90 seconds at Yorkville that did not belong to you. I am buying you 15 minutes of darkness at Bluffs. In exchange, you will be on the platform when the lamps go down, and you will let a railroad detective from a morals committee glimpse you arguing too close to the wall." They looked at each other, at Sam, at the cigarette, at their shoes. One said it out loud. "You want us to buy a scandal with our faces." "I want you to pay for the 90 seconds you already stole," Sam said. "The difference is where the story gets told. In a committee room about labor policy, or on a front page with your names. Your choice." They were young. They were foolish. They were more afraid of their patrons than of themselves. They nodded and agreed and did not understand that saving a judge is not a favor. It is a debt that comes back with children. To make a courtesy hold, you need more than a note. You need a signal that does not sound like a lie. Jasper gave the brakeman a reason, a rattle at the coupler that would rattle any man's modesty. The conductor signed the form he did not want to own because Sam handed him a safety report he could slide under it later. Dora ran a towel along the brass at waist height outside the judge's berth, the code that meant coffee and no eyes. Eddie walked the car with a water pitcher and rehearsed 3 different apologies for a delay that had not happened yet. At Council Bluffs, the dispatcher did exactly what the code on Hutch's note asked and thought he was helping the railroad. The midnight arrow rolled into the siding and sighed. The lamps went down 1 click. The car listened. The aides stepped onto the platform and argued with their hands, not their mouths. Merritt pretended to look at the wheels and looked at them instead. Hutch leaned in the vestibule shadow like a man about to take attendance. The judge sat in the corridor with a blanket over his knees, like an old soldier waiting for orders. The voice teacher combed her hair with a silver pin at the water cooler and looked like a woman other women hated, for good reasons. The car held its breath until the click that meant the yard release. Then it exhaled and moved like a sinner, leaving a confessional. Hutch folded his note into his pocket and decided he had purchased a judge and 2 aides with 1 hold. He had purchased nothing. He had purchased a photograph in his head that the platform did not share. The only witness against the judge was the blanket outside a closed curtain. The only view of the aides was two silhouettes and one apology written with a coffee cup stain. The only story Merritt could write was that a porter ran a safe car in a rough yard. Hutch did not like losing. Men who trade minutes for money never do. He changed targets. If he could not buy a judge, he would buy the ledger. Not the clean book, not the complaint book. The second one. The one with times and windows and who paid to move their problem in the dark. The blackmail book did not live on car 213. The Syndicate was not stupid enough to keep a single throat to cut. The entries moved with the laundry in cuffs and seams and the inside of pillowcases, written in pencil and soap, marked with numbers on tickets that no laundress would blink at. Every 3 runs, someone carried the sum of it to a man in Omaha whose tailor shop never closed. He sewed the numbers into a lining, pressed the coat, mailed it east as alterations, and never knew which names he had ironed. The book was not paper. It was ritual. Hutch watched Dora's basket too long and put it together badly. He thought if he seized the basket at the right stop, the ledger would be inside. He did not know that Dora already dropped the only piece that mattered into the railway post office car in a sleeve-marked, damaged towels. She did it at Monmouth while he was telling Sam about courtesy. At Bluffs, Hutch tried to be a thief with a mandate. He flashed his yard pass at the platform crew and reached for the laundry as the car rolled. Fincher wasn't there to stain his fingers. This wasn't a department store with a calm basement. This was a platform with grit and heat and men who did not like being touched. Eddie stepped between Hutch and the basket and took the shove someone meant for Dora. Jasper did not like seeing boys shoved. He moved the basket with one arm and Hutch with the other, in a way a brakeman would respect and a clerk would remember as a lesson. The basket stayed with Dora. The book stayed in a mail sack under a postal clerk's boot heel. Hutch stepped back with nothing in his hands but a timed embarrassment. Merritt saw all of that and said nothing. He was not stupid. He was learning why the railroad could not afford to have porters on the wrong side of a story. He stood at the end of the coach and watched Sam kneel to pick up a towel Dora dropped and saw the ledger's ghost cross the threshold without ever being seen. He wrote one sentence in his pocketbook and closed it. Delay justified by safety concerns. He did not add courtesy. He did not add morality. He had finally learned which words kept cars moving. The train crossed into Iowa with the kind of relief that makes men forgive anything. The judge tipped Dora with a gold piece he intended to look ordinary and failed. The aides shook Eddie's hand and thanked him without saying what for. The voice teacher left a silver pin on Sam's book again. He pushed it back with 2 fingers, the way a man pushes back a story that would follow him home. In the morning, the station at Omaha read like a church bulletin writ by enemies. Somebody whispered about a hold at Bluffs. Somebody else said the judge looked tired. Somebody else said 2 aides had bad posture on a platform. The paper printed nothing because the only man with a notebook had finally learned to watch without turning into a witness. Hutch filed a complaint with a committee in Chicago that would arrive in 2 weeks and make a noise no porter would hear. The Syndicate's ledger did not ride in Dora's basket that day. It rode in the pocket of a mail clerk who hated everybody equally and stamped bags because stamping bags was a job that paid on time. It left Omaha in a sack marked Peoria rates and reached a tailor shop with a clean window and a sign that said alterations while never admitting it was a book. A woman in back took it apart and sewed it into another lining and sent it east with a smile. If a man in a gray suit somewhere in a building full of opinions ever cut that lining, He would read numbers he could not decode, and a code he could not number. That was the safety. That was the trap. Hutch did not quit. He went back to Council Bluffs and asked around for a Porter's off-hours bar. He found one with a chalkboard for gin and a piano with 2 keys that didn't work. He bought a round and waited for a boy to drink enough to tell him about windows and towels and cuffs. Eddie did not show. Jasper did, but Jasper did not drink with men who called time a weapon. Dora walked past the door and saw the smile through the window and kept walking. Sam sent a bellboy with a tray and a lie. He told Hutch the crew had switched to a different car for maintenance. Hutch went home with his notebook full of the number 8 and a stain on his pride no soap could lift. 2 days later, a letter reached the company office with neat handwriting and a claim that a porter on car 213 had staged a stop for immoral purposes near Council Bluffs. The letter was unsigned in the legal sense and signed in every other way. The committee sent a telegraph to Merritt. Merritt sent a telegraph to Sam with no words in it, just the time he would be boarding next. Sam read the time and wrote in pencil under a cushion. Purchased, owed, delay, stolen, and sold. The Syndicate survived because it learned 2 ugly truths early. You cannot sell sin as a product. You can only sell the conditions under which it travels safely. And you cannot keep a ledger in a drawer. You can only stitch it into the country so that cutting it out makes more trouble than leaving it where it is. The car rolled on with a courtesy delay written in the timetable where nobody could read it except men with stopwatches and women with a reason to claim a minute. The book rode east inside a coat lining no judge would ever search. Hutch sharpened his pencil. Merritt sharpened his questions. Sam counted windows. Dora threaded a new needle. At dusk outside Des Moines, the rheostat died all at once instead of flirting with failure. The lamps blinked, stuttered, and went black. The corridor filled with a noise that was not screaming and not prayer. It was the sound people make when they cannot tell whether their secret has just been seen. The lamps die, and the corridor inhales like a wound. For one breath, there is nothing but axle song and the scrape of hangers. Then Sam Pike says one word that makes the car obey. Hold. Eddie freezes with the water pitcher in his hands. Jasper plants his palm on the end sconce and feels nothing but cold brass. Dora Lennox drops to her knees and sweeps the aisle with both arms, so panicked, feet do not grind the glass. Merritt is up in the smoking chair with his watch out, like a man who believes minutes can light a room. The conductor fumbles with the rheostat knob and learns the same lesson every new man learns once. When a car chooses to be dark, no handle loves you. A baby starts the sound everyone fears, not a scream. The little hiccup that means air will be a problem in 30 seconds. Dora gets there first and upends the shade to pull whatever night lives outside into the berth. Eddie is already wrenching the transom. The mother says nothing. Her hands find the porter's sleeve and hold because sleeves feel like walls. Merritt moves toward a curtain because he needs to prove he is useful. Jasper blocks him with a tray as naturally as a door. Hands full, Jasper says. No curtains. In the dark, rules feel like rope. Merritt breathes and stops being a hero for a living. Sam walks the aisle with the slow calm that makes panic bored. We had a rheostat fall down, he says to no one and everyone. We will stop for the brake check at the next board. Brake check sounds like prayer in the Midwest. People sit down on the word without meaning to. The car slides past a whistle post and the engineer tastes the air and chooses caution. The brakes talk in the language of iron and apology. The midnight arrow glides onto a short siding outside a town with a grain elevator and nothing else, and the night fills with the small noises people make when they realize they are going to keep breathing. It should end there. It does not, because Hutch rides this train tonight, and Hutch likes a dark room that belongs to other people. He comes through the vestibule with a lantern and a yard pass, and the permission men grant themselves. Company inspection, he says, and his voice carries the way a thrown coin carries in a church. The conductor likes the word inspection because it puts his hat on straighter. Merritt likes it because it means he can pretend to be helpful without the risk of being right. A couple of curtains like the sound because it gives them a way to stop without ending the thing they bought. Hutch steps into the aisle and does not look at people. He looks at hands. He is not here for sin. He is here for the book. Dora knows it because she sees his eyes skip past a woman's face and land on the laundry basket under the linen cart. She slides the basket with her ankle toward the pantry. He reaches. Eddie shifts the cart like it is heavier than it is, and the wheel catches his shin and buys them 1 second. Jasper fills that second with a lie that sounds like work. Coupler's got a chatter. Want to hear it, he tells the conductor, and drags him toward the vestibule like a magician showing a child a coin. The aisle clears by an inch. Hutch keeps moving. Merritt sees too much at once. A man with a pass doing the wrong job. A crew obeying a man without a hat. A darkness that can hide anything except intent. He has spent 2 runs trying to catch somebody's courage and has not considered that he should be catching cowardice instead. He steps in front of Hutch without meaning to and holds the lantern chest high for light. The flame shows what code never prints. Hutch's fingers already black with lamp soot from a rheostat he checked somewhere else tonight, and the dull graphite sheen ground into his nails from touching someone else's valves. Hands tell on men. "What are you looking for?" Merritt asks. "Morale," Hutch says, and pushes the word through his teeth the way men push a plow through wet earth. "Then you don't need the laundry," Merritt answers. "You need the coupler." Hutch sidesteps him with a smile that belongs in a mirror. He is going for the pantry. He thinks the ledger rides in a cuff because he is half right on every night, but this one. Dora did not pack the book. She sewed tonight's numbers into a hem and mailed them east 2 stops ago inside a pillowcase stamped damaged. What she has in the basket now is soap and thread and a bag with a split seam and a needle that could make a man bleed if he insisted on morale. Sam sees the line that will get drawn in a committee room if he lets this play out. Company man prevents theft, recovers property, finds ledger. Porter interferes. He takes the only exit that saves the car without ending the night in headlines. He gives Hutch a ledger, not the book. A book? He reaches under the cushion of the smoking chair and pulls the complaint ledger, the one full of dull gratitude and coffee praises, and puts it flat on the linen cart with the tired dignity of a Bible. "There's your morale," he says without heat. "Read it fast while people get air." Hutch does not want that book. Hutch wants the one that makes men careful around alleyways. But he cannot refuse a ledger in front of a detective without admitting his errand. He opens it with the same face he uses when he reads company circulars out loud to men who already know how to be safe. 3 pages of hot water appreciated and porter most courteous, and sleep was good. He has to turn the pages with clean fingers. His are not clean. He leaves a smear the color of his job on the corner of the paper. Dora lets him. Then she does something petty and mean that will save them in the morning. She leans over the ledger as if to admire his reading and stamps the corner with her laundry stencil, a tiny indigo circle that only shows in daylight when the ink dries and the lamp black lifts. In court, in office, in committee, that circle will sit like a birthmark where his fingerprints rode. If he waves the book tomorrow, he waves proof of where he put his hands tonight. Brake check complete, Jasper sings from the vestibule like a stage man who likes applause. The engineer lifts his lantern, the siding releases them. The lamps shiver back to life as if the train forgave them for needing it. 2 stops later, the car is full of men who have made a decision. The judge tips too much like a penance he hopes will spend. The aides shake hands in a way that says they will not speak of platforms again. The voice teacher gives Dora a pin and gets it pushed back with 2 fingers and a shake of the head. Merritt writes in his pocketbook without looking at his hand. Hutch stands at the door and tells the conductor he will be submitting a report about propriety during failure. The conductor says, "Thank you," the way men do when they have decided to ignore a fact until it is typed on paper they cannot lose. Omaha brings the inquiry like rain after a hot afternoon. Not a trial, a room, a table, a fan that does nothing. A man from the company with a thick folder labeled safety, and a man from the state with a thin one labeled morals, and Merritt with his watch in his palm, the way other men carry crosses. Sam and Jasper and Dora and Eddie stand in a row and look like what they are, people who make cars behave for money. The safety man asks about rheostats and brake checks. Jasper gives him couplers and rattle and grease and the correct number of turns on a retaining valve, like he is reading a catechism printed in coal dust. The morals man asks about courtesy delays, and Sam answers the way honest rooms answer liars. "We sell sleep," he says. "People bring their own dreams." "Do you sell time?" the morals man asks, because someone fed him a sentence, and he wants to hear it reverberate in his own mouth. "If a conductor signs a hold, we hold," Sam says, and nods to the conductor's signature on the Council Bluffs form that Merritt produced with his other hand, like a magician reversing a trick. "If a porter dims a lamp without instruction, he gets fired. You can choose which thing happened." The morals man does not like being offered choices in his own building. He asks about laundry. Dora shows him a mended seam on a bag with a split. He asks about notes. She says laundry does not lose anything by accident. He asks about a ledger. She puts the complaint book on the table with the indigo stamp in the corner where Hutch's finger smeared. The safety man starts to say something about chain of custody and stops when he sees the circle. He has seen that mark in other rooms. It means a porter did his paperwork properly while someone else played with a lamp. Merritt does the only noble thing he has left. He says nothing that would make a headline. He says the engineer braked for safety. He says the car behaved. He says he witnessed a yard employee handling a book he had not been issued. He does not say the names of passengers out loud. He does not say the word courtesy. He lets the safety man own the report and the morals man own his anger, and he walks out knowing he will ride again because he is the only kind of policeman a railroad can afford after midnight, one who understands that telling the truth about everything breaks teeth. Nobody can grow back. Hutch is not invited to the inquiry, which insults him more than losing the ledger would have. He stands outside the room and tells a clerk that he will file with the committee in Chicago. He will. The letter will say that Car 213 behaves like a hotel without a lobby, and that porters run a business the company refuses to name. The committee will file his complaint under the same word they always use, for things that make money until they cause fire. Pending. The wreck never comes. That is the point. The Syndicate's worst nights are not twisted steel. They are small failures that become large stories if you let the wrong men carry them. Sam refuses. He pays the only price he can afford. He takes the map of windows out of his pocket and burns it in a pan in the pantry and watches it curl until the 7 minutes between Dwight and Odell smell like tallow. He tells Jasper to stop buying seconds at the loose lamp. He tells Eddie to stop using duplicate tags as a convenience and only as rescue. He tells Dora to stop stitching cuffs with strings for women who pull too often and to start stitching refusals with seams that look like nothing until a hand needs to disappear. He adds one rule above the others on a card he tapes inside the pantry door. No souvenirs, no trophies, no proof. The judge writes a letter from a private desk 2 weeks later, addressed to nobody, thanking nobody, enclosing a donation to the Colored Orphans Home in Peoria that happens to be the place Dora sends her cast-off linens. Rosalie Vane sends nothing and pays for her silence with behavior. The aides discover discipline. The conductor learns to like quiet more than authority. Merritt rides once a month and drinks his coffee without daring to set it on the ledger cushion. Hutch gets moved to a yard where passenger cars never stop, and men who sit on couplers do it because their backs are bad, not because they are trying to steal time. When the midnight arrow rolls east again, the rheostat behaves like a penitent. The lamps dim when asked, and only then. The only courtesy delay is the one the dispatcher prints in the timetable for ice. People sleep. People sin. People meet under curtains and invent sentences to carry home. The crew sells the same product it has always sold, with one difference. If a man tries to buy the book, he will get complaints about coffee instead of a country's private map stitched into a coat. On a Sunday morning near Joliet, the car stops where it never stops to take on ice that wasn't needed. Dora opens the door for air and sees a tailor's parcel on the platform with a return address that does not exist. She hands it to Sam in the pantry. Inside is a jacket lining with pencil scratches, numbers, towns, windows. The book made small enough to wear and too useless to read if you did not help write it. Sam smiles without joy and gives the lining back to Dora. "Alterations," he says. She nods and cuts the stitches and makes the cloth into pocket squares that will wipe brass for a year. At Chicago, a man in a gray suit watches the crew step down and decides he will try again next season with a better pen. The porters step around him without looking, because the only men who can end the syndicate are the ones it serves. Those men will not testify against sleep. Sam closes the cushion and slides the complaint ledger in. He writes 2 words on a card and pins it inside the pantry door over the rule about children and bells. Purchased mercy. It is the only sentence he allows himself when the car is quiet. He knows what it means. Dora knows. Jasper knows. Eddie is learning. The midnight arrow pulls out on time. The map of windows lives only in 4 heads and a mail clerk's memory. Merritt stands in the vestibule and watches the rails braid themselves into a story nobody will admit in daylight. Hutch stands in another yard and times a freight he cannot bend. Rosalie stands in a mirror and chooses a hat that makes her brave. The judge stands up to speak in a courtroom and hears, for the first time, the sound of a train in his own voice when he grants a delay. Between 2 stations nobody loves, the lamps dim the right way. A woman tugs the edge of a blanket once, and a porter appears with coffee and an exit. 2 aides sit 6 feet apart and practice being careful. A man folds a letter and keeps it in the right pocket with his ticket. The car behaves. The country behaves badly. The syndicate watches both and sells the thing that keeps them from colliding. The engineer blows a long whistle for a crossing where nothing moves. The car rolls through a silence it paid for.